Amna was the kind of person who always put others before herself. She was young, full of dreams, and trying to balance her studies with small part-time jobs that helped her pay for books, rent, and other expenses. Life was never simple for her, but she never complained. She believed that if she kept moving forward with patience, her hard work would one day lead her to the life she wanted. One rainy evening, she was at home going through her notes when her phone rang. It was her close friend, Maria. Her voice sounded weak and tired. She explained that she had a terrible fever and could not go to work that night. Maria worked as a cleaner at one of the city's big office buildings, where her job was to tidy up the floors after everyone had left. If she missed a shift, she risked losing the little money she earned, and her supervisor was very strict about attendance. Desperate, Maria begged Amna to help her out, at least for that night. At first, Amna hesitated. She had never done that type of job before, and the thought of being inside a huge office building at night with strangers made her nervous. But when she heard the fear in Maria's voice, she couldn't say no. Amna had always been loyal to her friends, and she knew Maria was counting on her. So, after a short pause, she said yes. Maria gave her instructions over the phone, telling her what to do and where to go. Amna put on simple clothes that she didn't mind getting dirty, tied her hair back, and packed her things. She felt a little embarrassed thinking about what people would say if they saw her cleaning, but she reminded herself that work was work, and there was nothing wrong in earning an honest living. She told herself it was only for one night. When she reached the office building, she was amazed by how tall and shiny it looked from the outside. The glass windows reflected the city lights, and the entrance seemed more like a hotel than a workplace. For a moment, she felt out of place, as though she didn't belong there. But she gathered her courage and walked inside, showing Maria's ID card at the reception. The guard gave her a quick glance and let her through. Inside, everything felt different from the world she knew. The floors sparkled, the air smelled faintly of coffee and perfume, and the walls were decorated with large paintings. Amna took a deep breath and reminded herself of Maria's instructions. She went to the cleaning room, picked up the tools, and started her shift. The first few minutes were awkward. She moved slowly, unsure if she was doing it correctly. She wiped down the tables, emptied the bins, and tried to make everything look neat. The silence in the office felt heavy, broken only by the hum of machines and the occasional sound of her footsteps. She told herself to focus and get the job done. But then, just as she was struggling with a heavy trash bag, she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Amna froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Most of the employees had already left, and Maria had told her that the building would be almost empty. She looked up nervously and saw a man walking toward her. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, and carried himself with confidence. His hair was slightly messy, as though he had been working late. His face looked serious but kind. Amna quickly looked down, embarrassed to be seen with a mop in her hand. She assumed he was probably another employee who had stayed late to finish his work. "Do you need help with that?" he asked politely, pointing at the heavy bag she was trying to lift. Amna shook her head quickly. No, I can manage," she said softly, her cheeks turning red. She didn't want anyone's pity. But the man didn't walk away. He stepped forward and picked up the bag with ease, carrying it toward the bin. "It looked heavy," he said casually, almost as if helping her was the most natural thing in the world. Amna didn't know how to react. Most people in offices ignored cleaners. They walked past them without a word, treating them like invisible workers. Yet here was this man, not only noticing her but also helping her. For a moment, she forgot about her embarrassment and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and smiled back. "You're welcome. You're new here, aren't you? I haven't seen you before." Amna hesitated. She didn't want to explain that she was only covering for a friend. Something about his presence made her nervous. "I'm just helping out," she finally replied. He didn't push for more details. Instead, he leaned casually against the desk and started talking. "It's late for both of us, isn't it? I've been here since morning. Sometimes I wonder if this office ever sleeps." His tone was friendly, and it surprised Amna. She expected someone like him to be distant, but instead, he spoke as though they were equals. She found herself laughing at his remark. "I guess not. Even at night, there's always something left to do." They shared a few light words, and Amna slowly felt at ease. The man didn't act proud or arrogant like she imagined office workers might. He was simple, polite, and even a little funny. She noticed how tired his eyes looked, yet he still made the effort to chat with her, a cleaner he didn't even know. After a short while, he excused himself and said he had more work to finish. But before leaving, he turned back and said, "Don't strain yourself too much. Take it easy." Amna stood there, watching him walk away, wondering why she felt a strange warmth in her chest. She shook her head, telling herself not to overthink. He was just being kind, nothing more. Still, she couldn't deny that the encounter made the long shift a little brighter. For the rest of the night, she kept working, her mind replaying their short conversation. She didn't even know his name, but his words kept echoing in her heart. It felt unusual, almost as if fate had stepped into her ordinary night and placed something unexpected in her path. When Amna finally left the office and walked into the cool night air, she felt different. The job had been tiring, but her heart was strangely light. She thought about how a simple favor for a friend had taken her into a new world she had never stepped into before. Little did she know, this one night would become the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. Amna returned home late that night, tired but strangely happy. She couldn't forget the man who had spoken to her so kindly. His face, his voice, and the way he had helped her with the heavy bag kept playing in her mind. She reminded herself that she might never see him again, and it was foolish to think about a short meeting. Yet, a small part of her heart hoped she would run into him again. The next evening, Maria called her to thank her for covering the shift. She still wasn't feeling well and asked Amna if she could manage for another night. Amna hesitated for a moment. Cleaning offices was not something she enjoyed, but she also didn't want her friend to lose her job. After some thought, she agreed again, telling herself it was only for one more night. When Amna reached the office building the second evening, she felt more confident. The nervousness she had the first night wasn't as strong. She knew where the supplies were kept, what to do, and how to manage the routine. She tied her hair back and got to work quickly. The office was quieter than usual. Most of the rooms were empty, and only a few lights were on. As she wiped the tables and dusted the shelves, her mind wandered. She wondered if the man from last night was somewhere in the building. She told herself not to expect anything. He was probably busy with his own work and wouldn't even notice her again. Still, her heart beat a little faster whenever she heard footsteps in the hallway. It was almost an hour into her shift when she heard someone enter the room. She turned around and saw him again. He looked the same as before, smart, calm, and polite. This time, he was carrying 2 paper cups. Without hesitation, he walked up to her and held one out. "I thought you might need this," he said with a small smile. "Coffee helps during late hours." Amna blinked, surprised. She had never expected someone like him to bring her coffee. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you." She took the cup, feeling a little shy. He sipped from his own cup and leaned against the desk. "So, you're helping out again?" Amna nodded. "Just for a while. A friend of mine works here, but she's unwell." "That's kind of you," he said, his tone thoughtful. Not everyone would take someone else's place like that. His words made Amna smile. No one usually noticed her efforts. Most of the time, people just expected her to do what was needed, without thanks or recognition. But here was this stranger, noticing even the small things. They talked a little more. He asked about her studies, and she told him she was working toward finishing her degree. He didn't look down on her or make her feel small. Instead, he listened with genuine interest. She was surprised at how easy it was to talk to him, even though they had only just met. As the night went on, Amna found herself looking forward to his short breaks when he would come by and chat with her. Sometimes he shared little jokes about how the office felt like a second home. Sometimes he asked her about her dreams and plans. The way he spoke made her feel like she mattered, as if her thoughts were important too. When Amna left that night, she felt something unusual in her heart. She reminded herself again that he was just an employee working late, nothing more. Still, his kindness had touched her in a way she couldn't explain. The third night, Maria called again. Her fever had not gone down, and she sounded worried. Amna didn't have the heart to say no, so once again, she went to the office. By now, she knew the routine so well that it didn't feel strange anymore. But what she didn't admit to herself was that part of the reason she agreed was the hope of seeing him again. And sure enough, he was there. This time, he came earlier. When Amna walked into one of the meeting rooms with her mop, she found him already sitting at the table, typing on his laptop. He looked up, smiled, and said, "We meet again." Amna laughed softly. "It seems like you live here," she teased. "Sometimes it feels that way," he admitted. "But seeing a new face around makes the nights less boring." Amna felt her cheeks warm at his words. She focused on her work, but he kept talking to her, asking small questions, making her laugh with his observations. She couldn't help but notice how different he was from the picture she carried of office people in her mind. He wasn't proud or cold. He was simple, approachable, and kind. Later that night, he asked her, "Don't you get tired of this?" Amna shrugged. "It's just temporary. I'm only helping my friend. She really needs this job, so I can't let her lose it." "That's admirable," he said softly. "It shows how much you care." His words stayed with her even after he left the room. No one had ever said things like that to her before. She usually felt invisible in other people's eyes, but with him, it was different. Over the next few days, this became a pattern. Amna covered Maria's shifts, and each night, she found herself meeting him. He began bringing her small things, sometimes coffee, sometimes tea, and once even a sandwich because he said she shouldn't work on an empty stomach. These small gestures touched her heart more than she could explain. She didn't even know his name yet. That thought made her laugh sometimes. Here she was, looking forward to meeting a man whose name was still a mystery. But it didn't matter. What mattered was how she felt around him, comfortable, respected, and valued. Each night, their conversations grew longer. He asked about her favorite books, her favorite places in the city, and her dreams for the future. Amna told him about her wish to complete her studies and find a good job. She admitted how hard life could be, balancing work and studies, but she always kept trying. He listened without judgment, sometimes offering gentle encouragement, sometimes just giving her silence that felt safe. One night, as Amna was cleaning a glass window, he walked up beside her and said quietly, "You know, most people don't see cleaners. They walk past them as if they don't exist. But I see you." Amna froze for a moment, her heart racing. His words went deeper than she expected. She turned to him slowly, unsure what to say. All she managed was a quiet, "Thank you." He smiled, not pushing the moment further, and walked back to his desk. But Amna stood there for a long time, staring at the reflection in the glass, wondering why his words made her eyes feel warm. By the time she left the building that night, the city streets were silent and dark. The cool air touched her face, but her heart was filled with warmth. She told herself that she should be careful. After all, he was probably just a kind man, nothing more. Still, she couldn't deny the truth. Every night she spent at that office, she felt her life becoming just a little brighter, all because of him. She didn't know who he really was. She didn't know his story, his background, or even his name. But she knew one thing clearly: she wanted to see him again. And somewhere deep in her heart, she felt that fate was leading her towards something bigger than she had ever imagined. Amna never imagined that a simple favor for her friend would turn into something she looked forward to every evening. What started as a nervous experience of filling in for Maria had now become the highlight of her days. Every night when she stepped into the office building, she felt a strange excitement, as if she was stepping into a secret world where something good was waiting for her. And in that world, there was always one face she hoped to see. The man she had met during those late hours was no longer just a stranger. Though she still didn't know much about him, not even his name, she felt like they had built an unspoken understanding. Each night he would appear, sometimes carrying coffee, sometimes just a smile, and each time their conversations stretched longer. Amna found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. The long hours of cleaning didn't feel heavy anymore because she knew he would show up, even if only for a few minutes, to share words that made her heart lighter. One evening, she entered the building carrying her mop and cleaning supplies as usual. The guard nodded at her, and she gave a polite smile, her mind already wondering if he would be there that night. She told herself not to expect too much, but deep down she wished. As she started her routine, wiping down the glass doors and polishing the tables, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, and there he was, holding 2 cups of tea this time. "I thought I'd change it tonight," he said, handing her one. "Too much coffee isn't good." Amna laughed softly and took the cup. "You think of everything, don't you?" "Only the small things," he replied with a grin. They stood side by side, sipping tea in the quiet office. The large windows showed the city lights shining outside, and for a moment, it felt like the world had paused. Amna looked at him and wondered why someone like him would spend his time talking to someone like her. She didn't have expensive clothes, a good position, or anything special. She was just a student helping her friend. And yet, he looked at her as if she mattered. That night, their conversation went deeper than usual. He asked her about her childhood, and she shared stories about growing up in a small home filled with love but little money. She told him how her parents had always encouraged her to study, to dream big, even when life seemed too heavy. He listened carefully, nodding, sometimes smiling, and sometimes growing thoughtful. Then he shared something too. "People think working in offices, wearing suits, and staying in big buildings means life is easy. But sometimes, it can be very lonely." Amna looked at him in surprise. He seemed to have everything she didn't: comfort, status, opportunity. Yet, in his eyes, she saw a kind of sadness, like he carried a burden he couldn't share. For the first time, she realized that even people who seemed to have everything could still feel incomplete. Their connection grew stronger with each night. Sometimes he would ask her what her dreams were, and she would shyly admit that she wanted to finish her degree and maybe work in an office one day, not as a cleaner but in a position where she could use her education. He always encouraged her, telling her that she had the strength to achieve it. Other times, their conversations were simple and light. They would laugh about how the vending machine always gave out stale snacks, or how the office plants looked tired even though someone watered them daily. These small, ordinary talks made Amna feel as though she wasn't just a temporary cleaner. She felt seen, respected, and valued in a way she had never felt before. But along with the happiness came a quiet fear. Amna often reminded herself that she didn't know who he really was. For all she knew, he might not even work in the building permanently. Maybe he was just someone finishing a project. Maybe one day, he would disappear, and she would be left with only memories. This thought made her heart ache, though she never admitted it out loud. One particular evening, when Amna was cleaning a long corridor, she felt footsteps behind her again. She smiled to herself even before turning, knowing who it was. But this time, he wasn't carrying coffee or tea. Instead, he had a small sandwich wrapped in paper. "You always forget to eat," he said, handing it to her. Amna blushed. "I didn't forget. I just didn't have time." "Then you'll make time now," he said gently. She sat down on a chair, unwrapped the sandwich, and took a small bite. He sat across from her, watching with an amused smile. "See? Better already," he teased. She laughed, shaking her head. "You're too kind. I don't know why you do all this." "Maybe because I want to," he answered simply. Those words stayed in her heart. She wanted to ask him more, to know what he really meant, but she was too shy. Instead, she focused on her sandwich, while her thoughts raced in 1,000 directions. As days turned into weeks, the pattern continued. Amna kept covering Maria's shifts until her friend recovered, but by then, she didn't want to stop. Even after Maria was well again, she sometimes asked Amna to take her place for a night, and Amna never refused. She told herself it was to help her friend, but in truth, it was because she wanted to see him. Every time she entered the office, she looked for him, and every time she saw his smile, her heart filled with warmth. She found herself thinking about him during the day, wondering what he was doing, if he was eating properly, if he was resting after staying so late at work. She didn't know why she cared so much, but she did. One night, while they were standing near the large window overlooking the city, he said something that made her heart stop. "Do you know why I like talking to you?" Amna shook her head, her voice caught in her throat. "Because you're real," he said quietly. "Everyone else I meet here talks about numbers, profits, or business deals. But you talk about life. You remind me what really matters." Amna felt her chest tighten. She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She wanted to believe his words, but a small voice in her mind kept warning her to be careful. After all, she didn't really know him. Still, that night when she left the office, she couldn't stop smiling. She walked home with her heart beating fast, knowing that her feelings were no longer just friendly. She was falling for him, slowly and silently, without even realizing it. But as strong as her feelings grew, so did her fear. What if he discovered the truth that she wasn't really a cleaner, just a student helping her friend? What if he thought she had lied? And even worse, what if he already belonged to a world far above hers, a world where someone like her could never fit in? Amna lay awake many nights, thinking of these questions. Yet every evening, when she walked into that office and saw him waiting with his kind eyes and warm smile, all her doubts melted for a while. She didn't know what the future held, but in those stolen hours, under the glow of office lights and city windows, she allowed herself to believe in something beautiful. She had no idea that the truth about him was far bigger than anything she imagined. Amna's days began to feel brighter than before. Her routine of classes, small jobs, and responsibilities still continued, but now there was a new spark in her life. Every evening when she walked into that tall glass building, her heart carried a secret excitement. She wasn't just going there to clean anymore, she was going there because of him. She didn't know when it happened, but talking to him had become the best part of her nights. Their bond had grown deeper. What started with a kind gesture of helping her carry a bag had now turned into long conversations, laughter, and quiet moments that she cherished more than anything. He listened to her dreams, shared pieces of his life, and treated her with kindness that felt rare in this world. Amna often reminded herself not to expect too much, but her heart had stopped listening. One evening, she arrived earlier than usual. Maria was better now, but she had requested Amna to take her shift because she needed to attend a family gathering. Amna agreed, almost gladly. She walked into the building, humming softly to herself, and got to work. The office felt a little busier than usual that night. Lights were on in several rooms, and she could hear voices echoing down the hallways. She thought maybe an important meeting was happening. Curious, she carried her supplies toward one of the larger conference rooms, planning to clean after they were done. But as she walked past the glass walls, she stopped suddenly. Her eyes widened in shock. Inside the room, sitting at the head of a long polished table, was the man she had been talking to all these nights. He was dressed in a suit as always, but this time his presence was different. His voice was strong, confident, commanding attention as he spoke to the people seated around him. A dozen other men and women, all sharply dressed, were listening to him with full focus, taking notes as he spoke. Amna froze in place. Her mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. She thought he was just another employee, maybe someone staying late to finish work. But here he was, leading a meeting, giving instructions, and clearly holding authority. Her hands trembled slightly. She moved back quickly, not wanting him to see her staring. She couldn't believe it. Could it be that he was the boss? She rushed to a quieter corner, her heart beating fast. A few minutes later, one of the other staff members walked past her, speaking on the phone. Amna overheard him say, "Yes, the CEO is still in the meeting. It might go late tonight." Her stomach dropped. CEO. The word echoed in her mind again and again. The man she thought was just a kind late-night worker was, in fact, the head of the entire company. Amna felt dizzy. Everything suddenly made sense: the way people greeted him with respect, the confidence in his voice, the way he carried himself. Yet, she also felt a wave of hurt. Why hadn't he told her the truth? Why had he let her think he was just like any other employee? When she saw him later that night, walking out of the meeting room, she quickly avoided him. He noticed, of course. He always seemed to notice her. He walked toward her, smiling, but she kept her eyes down, busying herself with wiping a desk. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Amna forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine. Just busy." But her voice lacked the warmth it usually had. He frowned slightly, sensing the change, but didn't press further. Still, he watched her closely, as if he knew something was wrong. The next night, Amna thought of refusing Maria's request to cover again, but her friend begged, and she couldn't say no. She told herself she would keep her distance, finish her work, and not talk to him. But when she entered the office, her heart betrayed her. She looked for him anyway. He found her first. "You're avoiding me," he said simply, standing a few feet away while she pretended to dust the shelves. "I'm not," she replied quickly, though her voice shook. "Yes, you are," he said softly. "Did something happen?" Amna turned to him, her emotions bursting out. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were just another worker here?" For a moment, he was silent. His eyes held hers, calm yet full of something she couldn't read. Then he sighed and said, "Because I wanted you to know me as a person, not as a title. I'm tired of people only seeing the position, not the man behind it." Amna blinked, her anger mixing with confusion. "But do you know how it feels for me? I thought you were someone I could talk to, someone simple and real. And now I find out you're the CEO of this whole place. Do you know how small that makes me feel?" He stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "No. You don't need to feel small. You're the most real person I've spoken to in a long time. That's why I didn't tell you. I wanted you to see me without the weight of the title. And you did. You talked to me like I was just me. Amna's heart softened, but her doubts remained. She lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. But your world is different. I don't belong in it. I'm just someone helping my friend with her cleaning job. He shook his head. Titles, money, positions, they don't define who we are. You think I care that you were cleaning tables when I met you? No. What I care about is the girl who speaks with honesty, who has dreams bigger than her struggles, and who doesn't judge me by my suit or my position. Amna's eyes stung with unshed tears. His words touched her deeply, but fear still gripped her. Could something so unlikely be real? Could someone like him truly care for someone like her? For the first time, silence stretched between them. He didn't push further, giving her space to breathe. Before leaving, he said quietly, I hope you'll believe me. I wasn't pretending to deceive you. I was just trying to find someone who sees me as a man, not a CEO. That night, Amna went home with her heart heavy. She replayed every moment they had shared, wondering if it had all been true. She remembered his laughter, his kindness, the way he always brought her tea or coffee, the way he noticed her when no one else did. Those things couldn't be fake. And yet, the difference between their worlds seemed too wide to cross. Days passed, and though she continued helping Maria sometimes, she kept her distance from him. He respected her silence, but she often caught him watching her from afar, his expression unreadable. Inside, her heart battled between fear and hope. She wanted to trust him, but she was scared of being hurt. One evening, as she finished her work, he walked up quietly and placed a cup of tea on the table. Even if you don't believe me yet, he said softly, I'll wait until you do. Amna stared at the cup, her heart trembling. She didn't pick it up immediately, but a tiny spark inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. The days that followed were filled with silence for Amna. She still went to the office whenever Maria asked her to cover a shift, but her heart was no longer calm. Every time she saw him, her emotions wrestled inside her. A part of her longed to talk to him as freely as before, to laugh at his jokes and share her thoughts without hesitation. Another part of her kept reminding her of the truth that he was the CEO of the company, and she was just a girl standing there with cleaning supplies. He, too, seemed quieter than before. He didn't try to force her into conversations, though his eyes often searched for hers. Sometimes, he left a cup of tea or coffee on the table while she worked and walked away without a word. Sometimes, she found small notes scribbled on paper like "Don't forget to eat" or "You're doing well." These little gestures confused her heart even more. If he was only being kind, why did it feel so personal? One evening, Amna was wiping the glass doors when she noticed him standing a short distance away. He wasn't in a hurry this time. His jacket was off, his sleeves rolled up, and his expression looked softer than she had ever seen it. Slowly, he walked toward her. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. Amna hesitated, then nodded. She put the cloth down and folded her hands nervously. "I know you're struggling to trust me," he said, his voice calm. "And I understand why. But Amna, everything I said to you, every conversation we had, every laugh we shared, it was all real. I didn't hide who I am to play with your feelings. I only wanted to be seen as a man, not as a title." Amna's chest tightened. "But you have everything: power, money, status. And I have nothing. Our worlds are too different." He shook his head firmly. "No, you have everything that truly matters. You have honesty, kindness, and strength. Do you know how rare that is? People around me say what I want to hear. They see the CEO, not the person. But you," his voice softened, "you saw me without any of that. That's what I value." Tears welled in Amna's eyes. She wanted to believe him, but fear still clung to her. And what if tomorrow you change your mind? What if you realize I don't fit into your world? Then I'll change my world, he said simply. His words struck her heart deeply. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She turned her face away, trying to steady her emotions. She had always believed love belonged in dreams, not in her reality. And yet, here he was, looking at her with a sincerity that felt undeniable. Over the next few days, Amna allowed herself to talk to him again, though cautiously. He never rushed her. Instead, he listened more, smiled more, and gave her the space she needed. Slowly, her walls began to fall. One night, as they sat by the large glass window overlooking the glowing city, she confessed softly, "I was afraid because I never thought someone like you could see someone like me. But now I realize you never made me feel less. You only made me feel seen." He reached across the table, his eyes warm. "That's because you are seen, Amna. To me, you're not just someone filling in for a friend. You're someone I admire." Her heart swelled at his words. She didn't reply immediately, but her silence carried acceptance. From that night onward, things began to change. Their conversations grew more comfortable again, but now there was a deeper tenderness between them. She noticed the small ways he cared for her, like carrying heavy bags before she could, asking if she had eaten, and even once walking her to the bus stop so she wouldn't be alone at night. Amna's feelings, which she had tried so hard to push away, blossomed into something she could no longer deny. She was falling in love with him, not because he was a CEO, but because he was the man who made her feel valued in ways no one else had. Weeks passed, and their bond grew stronger. Maria often joked about how Amna seemed to enjoy covering shifts more than necessary. Amna never revealed the truth, but her smile always gave her away. One evening, when the office was especially quiet, he asked her, "Do you believe me now?" Amna looked at him with gentle eyes and nodded. "Yes. I believe you." He smiled, a smile brighter than she had ever seen before. "Then let me say this clearly. Amna, I like you. Not as someone I meet in passing, not as a friend of a friend, but as you. And if you'll let me, I want to be part of your life, no matter what it takes." Her heart pounded in her chest. For a long moment, she stayed silent, letting his words sink in. Then, with a shaky but sincere voice, she whispered, "I like you too." Those 4 words changed everything. From then on, their story no longer felt like a secret hidden in late-night conversations. They still met quietly, sharing laughter, dreams, and plans, but now there was an unspoken promise between them. He continued to support her, encouraging her to focus on her studies, reminding her that her future was bright. Amna, in return, gave him something he had long been missing: a connection without judgment, a love without conditions. For the first time in her life, Amna allowed herself to dream of love beyond her struggles. She realized that real connections weren't built on titles or money, but on understanding, kindness, and honesty. The man she had met by chance during a borrowed shift had become the one person who made her believe that her worth was not measured by her job or her background, but by her heart. One night, as they stood together near the window where their conversations often began, he whispered, "Do you know what I'm most grateful for?" Amna shook her head. "That your friend asked you to take her shift that night. If not, I would never have met you." Amna smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "And if I had said no, I would have missed the best part of my life." They both laughed softly, holding on to that truth. Their journey was just beginning, and challenges would surely come, but in that moment, under the quiet glow of city lights, they knew one thing with certainty: their love was real. It had been built not on titles or wealth, but on kindness, respect, and the magic of 2 hearts finding each other in the most unexpected place. And so, What started as a simple favor for a friend turned into the beginning of a love story that neither of them would ever forget, a story that proved love doesn't care about positions, power, or status. Love only sees the heart, and that is where they had found each other.